There's a reason you always trust your gut. Your whole body's health depends on it. Did you know 70% of your immune system resides in your gut? Invest in your health with Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic. DS-01 is formulated with 24 clinically and scientifically studied probiotic strains and a plant-based prebiotic to support whole body benefits. It works to promote healthy regularity and relief from occasional digestive discomfort and bloating. Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic is also formulated to support a healthy immune system, and it even helps you look healthier and more vibrant on the outside by promoting smooth, clear, healthy skin. Invest in your whole body's health with Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic. Go to seed.com/gut and use code 25GUT to get 25% off your first month. That's 25% off your first month of Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic at seed.com/gut. Code 25GUT.
Welcome to this podcast. This is episode 29. My name is Tim Mitchell, and I am in Toronto, Ontario. And I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
How's it going?
And on the line, we have Jaime Lopez Jr. from Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
All righty then. So here we are once again. Another short trek has gone by, so we have to crank up the podcast machine. We also had the finale for Doctor Who too. Did you watch that, Jaime, yet? Have you seen that one yet?
I have. I'm completely caught up with series 11 of Doctor Who. I think this is called.
Yeah. Is it 11? I don't know.
Now
is it 11, Jonathan?
It is, and now it's my time to feel shame. I'm like 5 episodes behind. So, but you guys can go ahead and talk about it. I really don't mind being spoiled on that.
All right. Okay.
I'm going to catch up probably this weekend, but I'm woefully behind. I did all my catching up on Flash, Arrow, and Supergirl this week so that I could watch the Elseworlds crossover. So that was where all my free time went.
Well, we're just interested in Jaime's opinion from the point of view being a Hanubian. I forgot what you called yourself. Hanubian. Anyway, before we get into that, I have some fact check. I don't know if you guys have any fact check, but I do.
I saw your fact check and agree and wholeheartedly endorse your fact check.
Alrighty then. So at 1528, I was mentioning the guy who plays Fitch and the guy who played the first Doctor. It's actually David Bradley. It's the guy who played Argus Filch on the Harry Potter series, and he also played William Hartnell, who was the first Doctor on the original series. So he was playing William Hartnell in a show called An Adventure of Time and Space, which, if you're interested, Jaime, you should go back and watch that one. It's basically a documentary about the making of Doctor Who, the first series anyway. I also mentioned Steve Reeves as Superman on TV, but no, it was actually, the name of the gentleman was George Reeves. Steve Reeves was a different dude from sci-fi movies, but yeah. So George Reeves played Superman on TV. That's who I remember. That was my Superman when I was a kid growing up, other than the guy in the comic books, right? And we also talked about the book A Man on the Moon, which is written by Andrew Chaikin. I couldn't remember his name. That was the basis, if you've ever watched the TV series by Ron Howard. No, by, what's his name? Actor, Forrest Gump.
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yes. He was one of the producers of it, From the Earth to the Moon. Yeah, that was a series, like I think 8 episode series about the getting the man from, test flights to the moon. But it was based on the book A Man on the Moon, which is the sort of the de facto facts and figures of the Apollo missions and Geminis and Mercuries as well. And it's a fact check from what we have, from what I caught of our foibles. So
No, other than that, we were perfect. It was a good week.
Was it a good week? Okay,
yep.
Good. All right. So why don't you dig into the headlines there, Jonathan?
Well, we had a bunch of stuff to catch up on. The biggest one for our Star Trek-focused audience is we got news from CBS last week that the Picard series, based on Captain Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation, is going to be coming in 2019. So we're going to see that by the end of the year. This is exciting. We weren't sure what the timeline was, but apparently they've already gotten a writer's room together, and they've already broken a bunch of episodes, and they have a real sense of what they want to do, and they expect to start filming soon. Bad news, they are not filming in Toronto like Discovery is currently being filmed. They're filming it in California. So
do we have any idea what, actually we won't know the timeline until it comes out, but surely he's 20 years older than the last episode of The Next Generation.
Yeah, there was some speculation online when this announcement came out. It came out as part of CBS's earnings report, I guess, this last week or two. There was some discussion about where we left Picard, because I guess the intention was that the last Star Trek The Next Generation film in the theaters left us with a very sort of strange place. We saw Data died. Riker and Troy were headed off on their own ship. Worf was headed off on his own adventures back to the Deep Space Nine world. So really, Geordi LaForge and Picard are the only ones still left on the Enterprise. And so there was a real sort of what's going to happen next. And there was talk that there was supposed to be a sort of movie that wrapped all that up and gave some closure to that sort of story. But because the last movie was such a bomb, as Nemesis was such a bomb, they decided to stop that and go a different direction. Hence the new J.J. Abrams Star Trek that appeared a few years later. So, of course, it's got to pick up 20 years later. Obviously, Patrick Stewart's 20 years older. The question is, we left him in this sort of bleak place where his whole sort of family of Star Trek has sort of dissipated. So, yeah, where do you guys think they're going to pick that up with? Are they going to bring the band back together, or does it just come back to the focus on Picard? Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, if you've read you probably read some of the Star Trek novelizations, like from the Kirk timelines and stuff like that. And they used to, he sort of became a, not quite a rebel, but he was a sort of, I don't know, businessman or doing all kinds of weird trading and that kind of stuff. And not so much, he wasn't restricted by the commandments of the Federation. He could go off and do sort of different kind of things, right? So, I mean, maybe that's a sort of, like Emperor Georgiou kind of gets to run around and be this X-Squad person in Discovery timeline, right? So I don't know. It could be interesting. It's hard to say. By the way, Nemesis. I was watching Nemesis the other day. I thought it was much better than Insurrection. I don't know about you, but I thought Insurrection was more like an episode.
It was
of the show,
a little
right?
familiar to, and the whole clone thing with Tom Hardy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? What was your remembrance of Nemesis?
Well, I mean, I just literally watched it like a weekend ago. I think it was on TV. I watched bits of it. It was interesting, but it was very similar to the sort of kind of political plots that, notwithstanding all the mind melding and all that kind of stuff, but and the mind games literally and figuratively. But I'm looking at Troy, but it's sort of the Romulan sort of uprising and sort of a political coup to try and take over and that kind of stuff. I forgot how it ends, but I think they run around. I just remember I think Data and Picard are flying a Romulan spaceship through the halls of the ship. That was a bit like that was George Lucas could have written that plot line, but it was an interesting movie. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what they do. I mean, it could. Is it going to be sort of like Han Solo, the Solo movie was, where sort of the adventures of Han before he joined up with Luke and Leia kind of thing, just sort of being a risk taker and that kind of stuff, right?
They cast Patrick Stewart, who is again, he's 20 years older. I don't think they can go backwards unless they do some flashbacks, which certainly could be on offer if they want to do a little more actiony stuff, because I don't know how actiony he's got to be in his late 60s, early 70s. Patrick Stewart is going to want to do.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's really, I think I'm pretty excited about it. Again, Star Trek has been looking backwards for the last decade. They've been looking at, they rebooted the whole Star Trek film franchise with the new Kirk and Spock and the whole new Enterprise. They went backwards even further still for Discovery. This is the first chance we've had since the end of, I guess, Voyager to see where the universe went forward.
Yeah, but they have kind of painted themselves in the corner, because remember that last episode of The Next Generation ends up with Picard on his vineyard, right? Or are we meant to think that's a different timeline? Yeah, but then we also,
that storyline, that whole timeline got erased too. So
did it?
It did. So that was sort of maybe because that's when the three Picards merge the timelines, and then that timeline gets wiped out, and it's Q's lesson about here's how humans can evolve, and
right. Oh, okay.
But yeah,
now I'm confused.
It's gonna be cool. I think. Like I was all in on Next Generation. Obviously, it came out when I was 13. It was a big influence in my life as far as science fiction goes. I like those characters, and we did get some tastes. We saw obviously Worf came over and was on DS9, and there's been sort of continuing that same timeline through Voyager. But then when did Voyager go off the air? Like, it's got to be 15 years ago, 16 years ago.
Yeah, who knows? A long time ago.
A long time ago.
Maybe even longer, because I thought it was.
Maybe late 90s,
before the 2000s. Yeah,
like late night, like a good long time ago. So That's a long gap for us to have not looked forward. The cool thing about TNG was that when it picked up from where we left off in the Star Trek movie universe, because that's where we had gotten to, it was this leap forward in time. And, again, we got eventually tastes of, Spock was there and Scotty was there and Bones was there for the first episode even.
Right, yeah.
This was the first time that we had sort of jumped forward, and then we built this whole sort of, 3 series, 21 seasons of content in this timeline that had sort of spanned that. And then we just sort of walked away from it. And then they went backwards and did, what's that awful show called? Enterprise. And then they canceled that. And then they've done the reboots, and then they've done Discovery, and they've never gone forward again. I'm kind of excited about connecting again with that timeline and going forward, because going forward, like, I honestly think, as excited as I'm about Picard, I would almost like another TNG to see where the legacy of those characters left us that many years later. Like, what's the long-term fallout of the Dominion War? What's the long-term fallout of, Janeway and the crew's foray into the Delta Quadrant? What's the long-term fallout of, Nemesis and some of the events in there? Like, how did that impact that universe? And we've seen that in the expanded books and stuff like that, but I want to see it on my TV set. So it could be cool.
Yeah, well, look forward to it. I guess it's coming soon to a TV or streaming soon to some device near you.
Yeah, there you go, Jaime. You're stuck with your CBS All Access.
Yeah, it will be. So just take Discovery, the end of its episode run. Let's say it starts in January, so it's probably done, if they don't have a mid-season break, sometime in March-ish. And this comes in, let's say, late 2019, so let's say September, so they can get it into December. I would say it's probably coming like the September, the Q3 sort of time frame.
So they'll call it Fear the Star Trek Discovery?
Yeah, that's right.
But they'll probably have short treks, short trek season 2 in between to get you through Q2.
That's true, yeah. Well, it's like the Clone Wars, the little cartoons they did on all those, and Rebels, right? Star Wars Rebels.
Yep. And we talked about it. They're developing other Star Wars series too. There's talk that they're doing more. They have the Emperor Georgiou series. They talked about that now. That doesn't sound like it's coming in 2019, but if they continue doing series of Picard and Discovery and then the Georgiou series, we could be looking at, not all year round Star Trek again, but close. And that's pretty cool.
All right. So what's next in your headlines?
A couple of movie news things that I thought were really interesting. So, story out of Warner Brothers DC that they are developing a movie based on Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle, for those who do not know, is a character that has been around for a long time. There's a couple of different characters that have worn the costume of Blue Beetle. But the one that they're going to focus on is Jaime Reyes, who is obviously a Mexican-American character, and has basically had this suit that grants him incredible powers, ability to fly and to interface with technology. This is of note because Blue Beetle is, as I said, a Mexican-American character, and coming off the heat that we got this year in Black Panther, really opening up an audience in the United States in particular for Black comic book character. Now we're seeing some of the knock-on of that, so we're seeing a movie in development with a Mexican-American character to appeal to Latino people and hopefully everyone else. And spinning out of that, Marvel has announced at the same time that they're developing a film on the character Shang-Chi, who is the master of Kung Fu, very famous 1970s popular comic book series. There's their first Asian led film, and they've hired a writer and they're developing that. And so again, I think the knock on is, it was sad how revelatory it was that there was this big audience waiting for, like there was for women for Wonder Woman and, African Americans waiting for Black Panther. They're suddenly waking up and realizing that there's a huge number of, people who are underserved in representation in movies. And so they're going to have an Asian starring character and they're going to have a Latino starring character. It's great. It's great that we're getting that. It's also, it does smack of, did it just occur to you that all these people were there and that they want to go see movies that are representative of themselves? But exciting nonetheless. I like Blue Beetle's a fun character. I've enjoyed seeing that character unfold over the last, it's probably been about 12 years since that character was developed. And Shang-Chi's, again, a very famous 1970s popular character. Some really good runs in there. So it'll be interesting to see how those go. So I must admit, I'm curious. Jaime, your obviously heritage speaks to the Blue Beetle experience. Do you have any thoughts on seeing that kind of representation in the lead of a movie?
Yeah, it even seems like they were trying to get suspiciously close to making it perfect for me because, well, one, sharing the same first name, and he also lives in my hometown of El Paso, Texas, which is mind-blowing to me that it's usually New York or Gotham as a surrogate or Chicago or Toronto or something. Couldn't believe that that was the case. But yeah, I did read some of the series. I think I stopped around the time that Amazon bought Comixology and it became a real hassle to have account stuff. Mm-hmm. So I do need to jump back into it. But it does strike me as a really nice opportunity to do some fun things where the Blue Beetle is sort of, or that iteration of Blue Beetle is sort of Green Lantern mixed with Iron Man.
It's a perfect analogy. Absolutely.
So hopefully they can do it some justice there. And as you mentioned there, it's great to have the representation out there where it wasn't even like Black Panther like beat you over the head with it being an African American movie. It was just sort of like, well, yeah, like this is where they're at. They're in the continent of Africa, so this is just the way things are.
Yeah, sure, cool. Next, some sad news. Netflix has canceled yet another of their Marvel series. Let's raise a glass to the demise of Daredevil, which by all appearances was the most viewed, most popular of the shows that they've had on since they started doing these Marvel shows in conjunction with Netflix. The motivation for the cancellation is one of those, depends who you believe. Netflix put out a very nice press release that basically said, that's it. So long, farewell. Thank you for your service. 3 seasons and it just wasn't worth doing anymore. Obviously, we talked about this in regards to the demise of Luke Cage and Iron Fist as series that perhaps there's some hard feelings over the fact that Disney in 2019 will be launching its Disney Plus service, which will be loaded full of Marvel content. And since Netflix will be a direct competitor of that Netflix is divesting itself of these characters.
Really? Huh.
Which is...
Does Disney own the characters or something? Or?
Disney owns the characters. I don't know the details of the partnership that they had with Netflix as far as the exclusivity of, if this is another situation like they got wrapped into with Fox where, we give you a whole pile of characters that you can use. Or I know that Marvel actually produced those shows and Netflix was the platform. Right. So I don't know if this means that if Marvel wanted to resurrect them on a different platform. Now, they've already said that they will not do R-rated content on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. So they'd have to be cleaned up if they wanted to revive them on Disney Plus. However, part of this purchase of the assets from Fox includes another huge stake in Hulu. So Disney will have a controlling stake in Hulu. And Hulu has no such restrictions. They already broadcast shows like Runaways, which is a Disney property. So they could, if they had the wherewithal, develop future seasons there. However, if past seasons are only allowed on Netflix, then I'm not sure they'd be interested in doing that. So it sounds like, for all intents and purposes, 3 series are dead, and they've already said they're not doing more Defenders, so that's 4. The only 2 that remain are Jessica Jones and The Punisher, which are being developed right now for season 3 for Jessica Jones and season 2 for The Punisher. And I think we can pretty much expect that those will be the last seasons of those shows.
Right. That's too bad.
Yeah, it is. And I think on one hand, I think some of us, I don't know if you guys share the same opinion. The shows were getting a little, they felt like they were doing 12, 14 episodes a season. They were a little bloated. And it felt like they were coming a little too fast and furious along with the world of ever changing content. But there was some really good storytelling in there and some really cool stuff.
Right.
That Daredevil series was fantastic. It was the closest
hadn't watched that one. I hadn't watched the Iron Fist or Luke Cage either, but planned to at some point. Yeah. Well,
Daredevil was bang on. It was the one of the truer presentations of the character. It was grounded. It was real. The characters had depth. They let not just the lead, but a lot of characters have some time. Amazing villain they created in the Kingpin, who was Wilson Fisk was really, really amazing in that. So yeah, it's R.I.P. I'm going to miss that series, and I'm disappointed. And I'm disappointed that it seems like this whole Marvel Netflix partnership is doomed to end.
Right. All right.
Following up on last episode, we had talked about the fact that the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina had been sued. The producers for the use of some imagery belonging to the Satanic Temple. The good news, they have settled their issues. Apparently, they were using images of the goat-headed Baphomet on the show, and the Satanic Temple was upset that they had been portrayed, but apparently they had filed a lawsuit, and the lawsuit has been amicably settled. So it does not sound like there will be any further repercussions. It doesn't say what the details are, so I don't know, having not seen that portion of the series yet, I don't know if there's something that they have changed or will change for future presentations, or if it's something they're going to change going forward. But either way, they're out of the hot water with the Satanists.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with a little frankincense, myrrh, and gold.
Yes.
All right. Enough of that. So what's next? Oh, Jaime, you got one here.
Yeah, if you were worried about not having enough Marvel content, let me prove you wrong, or make you feel better. So apparently there is a sequel in the works for Doctor Strange.
No, he's dead.
Yeah, he get dusted.
Spoilers for Avengers Infinity War,
But is he dead, Jonathan? Is he really dead? Are they really dead? Or are they just dematerialized and they're going to appear on a transporter bay somewhere?
You're our singer. Can you sing Dust in the Wind for us?
Yeah. All they are is dust in the wind. Yep. Sorry, Jaime.
But yeah, apparently when he's not voicing the Grinch in animated films, Benedict Cumberbatch will be making his return as Doctor Strange. So the sequel there.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's going to fit in between somewhere? Or
I don't know.
Jump out of the ashtrays and stuff?
I don't know if it'll be in between per se, just considering that Captain Marvel is coming out, and right after that is the sequel to Avengers Infinity War. I have to imagine that this is post, what do they call it? Phase 3, I think they were calling.
Yeah, I guess this is Phase 4.
Yeah.
I'm surprised none of you guys put the Marvel, the trailer in the show today. Or did you?
Oh,
yeah, you did.
I think I put it in the main.
All right.
Yeah, we just got so much content that it's hard to see.
Yeah, well, let's rip through this stuff so we can get to the main, because we're running out of time.
Yeah. So there's that. The next one we have on the list here is the Sonic the Hedgehog fan base going insane because Paramount has given us a teaser trailer, and folks have many opinions about the way that they've decided to render Sonic, as he is shown in silhouette here. Apparently there is some context here that makes it make a little bit more sense. This Sonic looks a little bit more realistic, for lack of a better term. And apparently the context is Sonic will be in the real world with humans in some way, kind of similar to some of the 3D games. So I think that's
like the Smurf movie, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not going to say that
Sadly,
that's like
I can
the best
confirm
route.
that, yes.
Wouldn't say that's the best route to take. I think they should just do like a fully animated movie, just like, Incredibles or similar type ones. But
true. Okay.
If they're going to go this way, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But it could very easily turn into like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles more recent films, that they look kind of weird and grotesque in the real world.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of monstrous things, there's a new trailer out there for Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Oh, I see what you did there.
This one stars Millie Bobby Brown. You might know her from Stranger Things. She plays the character 11. She's going to be in this film. It looks a lot like the other. I could swear there's a pre-existing Godzilla movie called Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which involves fighting Rodan, King Ghidorah, and Mothra.
Yeah,
so maybe
that really rings a bell for me too. But I'm not an aficionado. I'm a casual Godzilla fan. Is this the movie tied to the Bryan Cranston reboot thing they did a few years ago? Is this the second of those, or?
I think so, because this trailer mentions the fact that they've been living with Godzilla as moving natural disaster for the past like 5 years. I forget how long they say it's been.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
And have you watched it? Are you excited?
I've seen the trailer. The trailer looks exciting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's at all necessary?
I mean,
come on, it's a monster movie. It's a bucket of popcorn.
Yeah, it definitely fits into that sweet spot of you have to watch this in the theaters, otherwise you're going to lose about 50% of the value out of it.
Hang on, I'd like to back up for a second. Tim was just defending monster smash 'em up movies, which Jaime and I are both avowed lovers of.
I was reminding Jaime of his big bucket of popcorn and his big gulp.
Oh, okay. I thought you were advocating for that because I know you didn't like Pacific Rim, and Jaime are both on board for that one.
Yeah,
so
yeah. So I do still haven't watched the Tom Hanks movie with Emily Blunt because it's got Tom Cruise because it's got Tom Cruise in it.
Yeah, well, no movie should have Tom Cruise in it. That's just wrong.
So Jaime, bucket of popcorn, big gulp, and watch monster smash stuff or what?
Yeah, that will actually be a theme to this episode. We'll loop that in later, especially because you brought up Pacific Rim. But right. Moving along, we can all marvel at the new Captain Marvel trailer that shows us more of the character and how it.
So he's not dusted.
She.
Oh, Captain Marvel. Oh, yes, right, her. Yes, the one that's going to come along and never mind.
Yeah, it's very confusing because there are many characters with very, very similar names, and there has been more than one Captain Marvel in comics continuity.
That's true. Yeah.
In separate universes, and on top of that.
Wait, how many Captain Canadas have there been, though?
Captain Canada, 0. Captain Canuck, there's been
Captain
1.
Canuck. Okay. All right, yeah, so not very many.
Yeah, and then we had Guardian. Guardian was sort of our other very patriotic hero.
And from, what's his name? From Logan.
That's right, Wolverine, absolutely. And we even had a character named Sasquatch, so there you go.
Did you? Okay, wow, it's true.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jaime, back to you and Captain Marvel.
I mean, the movie itself comes out on March 8th, 2019.
Alrighty then.
Jonathan, do you have thoughts that sound like you wanted to say?
Oh, I'm stoked. I'm a fan of the character. I'm a fan of the Carol Danvers character that they've adapted into this. I'm glad that they're pushing forward. It's about damn time Marvel got its act together and had a female-led film. I mean, kudos DC. You beat them to something with the Wonder Woman character leading a movie. It's long overdue for a franchise, for a series of films like the Marvel films, and who have, to their credit, had some nice, strong female character moments. But it's about time that one of them was the star of the show.
Cool. All right. That's your cue, Jaime. Next.
Sorry, I was thinking of a witty way when I was like, we will bebop our way. No, I couldn't. I couldn't think of a way to transition that seamlessly.
Man.
So what I will say is that more Netflix-related stuff. Netflix is going to make a live-action remake, I guess we'll call it, of Cowboy Bebop, the sort of landmark seminal anime, Japanese animation, based on a series that was one season. I want to say about 20-ish episodes, and it's all about this ragtag group of bounty hunters. And it's hard to say more without giving away stuff. But if you take a link in the show notes for those of you driving home, you'll say, oh, yeah, I know those characters. I've seen tons of people with the gear over at conventions, or I've seen people dressed as them, that sort of thing.
Right. Okay.
Are you a fan enough to take the jump and watch the live action?
I could do that. I was going to watch the Death Note one on Netflix, and then was told by many people, don't bother, and I never did.
What do you think about the trend
of making live action versions of these things?
Yeah, because it's an art form, right? It's not as simple as just making them into live action people.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
they're doing that now with the Disney movies too, right? They're taking the classic 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s Disney movies and 80s, 90s at that, and turning them into live action movies. Dumbo is coming out next year. It seems to be that they feel like technology has sort of hit the point where they can do the best of both worlds. I disagree. In some cases, as you say, it's an art, and particularly anime. Anime is a specific art form. You lose something, I think, in the translation.
There's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think something like The Lion King is probably, with Disney's Lion King, is probably a little bit more reasonable to do. It's not even technically live action because it's all CGI as far as I know. Unlike Sonic the Hedgehog, they won't have people involved in any way.
But by the same token, so if you take something like Jungle Book, right, which I saw when I was a kid, I've always liked Jungle Book and the story story and all that kind of stuff. In fact, my dad's name was Balu in his family, right? But then when they made the 3D or the live action version with an actual bear and an actual jaguar, I mean, that just doesn't work for me. They were much better as two-dimensional animated cartoons, like King Louie and all that kind of stuff, right? But I don't know. I think making things into live action just because you can is not a reason to do it.
Well, it makes you wonder where that trend ends. I mean, they've gone backwards and then done recent stuff like they're doing an Aladdin remake. They've done Beauty and the Beast. They've done some of the contemporary Disney works are now being brought to live action.
Most of those stories were actual fairy tales from even before Disney, right?
Yeah, of course. It makes you wonder sort of where that ends. Are they going to go back and do pretty much everything they've ever done in this new form? And I'm not sure, do we need to see? And again, I'm not looking forward to the live action version of Toy Story or, Incredibles. No. Think of the amazing work that is as far as the landmarks in digital animation. To turn that into a live action because money, it doesn't sit well.
Yeah, because money.
Which, to be fair, that's what when I saw Cowboy Bebop and then some of the other news that Jaime's got for us today about anime projects, I just kept thinking, well, somebody must have brought a lot of money to the table on this stuff.
But I was going to bring up Ghost in the Shell in relation to this Cowboy Bebop thing, but I think a couple of stories later we're going to talk about that. But because I couldn't even make it through the first 20 minutes of Ghost in the Shell myself, and I've never even seen the anime. Right? It just didn't work for me at all.
Ghost in the Shell is a terrible movie, but it's a brilliant anime. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's why? It's like let's make a live action Last Supper because we can.
Well, and they've been talking about doing Akira for how long have they been talking about turning Akira, which is one of the seminal works of anime, into a live action movie, and everybody in Hollywood who was a kid in the 1980s wants to turn that into a live action movie, and leave it alone. It's amazing.
That's what I mean. That's the same thing with Ready Player One. It was a great book, and I'm not sure that I'm convinced that it was a great movie.
It was a good movie. It was a great book.
Yeah, for sure. Well, by the same token, so was Lord of the Rings and all that.
Yeah, I mean, name the movie that's better than the book.
Does it have Tom Cruise in it?
Movie better than the book. That's a good question. We'll have to come back to that. I would guess that maybe Godfather or Godfather 2, but I've not read the book, so I can't definitively say.
But they were good about, again, Jaws is, again, there are some out there, right? But again, that was a hit book. They became a hit movie. There are, I'm sure, somewhere.
So Jaws was a book before it was a movie?
It was. Peter Benchley, yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I'll throw the gauntlet down on that one. We don't have to all answer right away. I mean, we can bring that one back for our next pod, but yeah, it's hard to get those comparisons right, and it just like remakes and reboots and so many different things. I mean, they'll find an audience, and I think maybe it's also time for all three of us to accept that not all of this stuff is for us.
That's true.
It's for a next generation of people who maybe didn't get the exposure or weren't around when Cowboy Bebop
don't know what a book is.
Or that's absolutely legitimately fair. It's funny because my eldest son, 15 years old, he hasn't read, I would say, a lot of novels. Read Ready Player One, loved it, and yet he is also is one of the loudest advocates for the book was way better than the movie. But when you say that about other things, he's like, I don't want to read the book. I just want to watch the movie.
You know what? I don't think I read books till I was in my 20s anyway. So I can see where he's coming from. There's too much going on in high school and whatever, right?
Well, and they're forcing you to read a lot of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily. So exactly.
All right, Jaime, what's next?
Running in the opposite direction of what we were just talking about is the announcement that Adult Swim and Crunchyroll are teaming up to make an anime series out of Blade Runner, or in the universe, I should say.
Because money, right?
Because money. Blade Runner Black Lotus is what it will be called. So we'll see how that goes.
I could see it working. I don't think there are worse things that could be turned in from that way, one way to
Men
the other.
In Black?
Yeah. Sure. I'd give that a roll, especially if they build on that sort of where we left off at the end of 2049, where we've got a sort of universe to play in. I think that's one of those wide open universes where you don't have to focus on Deckard and Kay and stuff. You could really tell completely separate stories, like the Unimatrix, the Matrix stuff. You could go a lot of places in those universes and be fine knowing what the universe is as the ground rules, and then just telling good stories. So I think the anime could work really well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very 70s thing to do too. Like a movie becomes successful and then they turn it into a Saturday morning cartoon. It happened all the time.
Yeah.
droids and what was the other one? Droids and Ewoks.
Ewoks
and droids.
Ooh, yeah. Let's not use those as emblematic of good things that happened.
No, I'm not saying I'm using them as just perfect examples of like how they cheapened something that was really cool into something that was mediocrely okay.
Yeah,
but okay in their own right. I mean, they stand alone as pieces. Well, even the Star Trek animated series that was on TV, right? It was like the TV show, and it had the same sort of ethos, but it didn't quite match up. But I enjoyed it because it was a cartoon and I was a kid.
Well, and to be fair, like as kids we're, and even as adults now, like I want more of what I want, like when at a certain point there's obviously a limit, and we're in a world where content is being just jammed down our throats, but we also get, when CW says, hey, guess what? We're doing yet another DC property. Part of me is like, oh God, now I have something else I have to watch, but I have to watch it because I want to watch it because I'm so thankful for the fact that they're doing it.
Right.
If somebody had told me, by the way, they're going to be doing a Black Lightning TV show that you can watch for nothing, when you're in your 40s, I'd be like, you're bouncing off the walls with excitement. So, I'm not going to be, and it's good TV. It's good, it's well acted, it's well written, it's, it's well made, I can't believe that we're in a world where that kind of stuff happens. And that, that the weirdest part is that, like, my mom might know who some of these characters are because they exist in the zeitgeist now. Like that's not where I was when I was a boy. So I'm excited about that, and I'm not going to begrudge any of that creation. So I'll take it if they want to keep adding layers, TV shows, anime, cartoons, whatever to the pile.
So I guess we'll wait and see if they'll come do the live action Peppa Pig movie, right?
Oh, mark my words, they're doing a live action Dora movie, Dora the Explorer.
No way.
Oh yes, they are, and they're doing a live action Kim Possible movie too. So
well, there you go.
Mark my words, all that stuff will be eventually spun around. There will be, I'm sure, the weirdly inappropriate, just like we're talking about Sonic the Hedgehog, there'll be a weirdly inappropriately half-human SpongeBob SquarePants, or, name the weird cartoon that your kids liked in the last decade, and it'll come around. It'll all come around.
Ren and Stimpy.
Oh, well, Ren and Stimpy has some other issues. I don't know if anybody's followed that one, but yeah, there's some stuff that, people will, if they know that people are feeling nostalgic. Again, why do you think they made those Smurfs movies? I'll tell you, having seen them in the theater because my kids were small, they are the worst. They are so epically awful, and yet they made big money, and people came, and my kids thought they were fantastic, and I don't get it, but it worked. So if there's money, they will come.
Right.
If there's money, they will build it.
So speaking of anime and live action and stuff.
Yeah. And speaking of more money, I think they were quite disappointed with the Ghost in the Shell Scarlett Johansson live action movie, as Tim mentioned earlier. So they're going back to the roots with Ghost in the Shell SAC_2045, which will be animated, but not in the traditional 2D animation. The image that they've given out as the teaser of the major is it looks like it's that cell shaded style of 3D animation that gives you the sort of the look of 2D animation, but is actually done with 3D animation.
Oh, really cool.
That would be Netflix.
Just like
I probably should mention that.
Well, that'll be a nice palate cleanser.
Mm-hmm. And next?
Yeah, the big bombshell as far as anime properties go with regards to Netflix is that the 1990s huge sort of masterpiece that everybody still references to this day, Neon Genesis Evangelion, is heading to Netflix coming in the spring. So it'll be all 26 episodes, as well as the films that don't include the rebuild of Evangelion films. And this one will be interesting because I think it will be something that people who are watching modern anime should watch and see where a lot of the tropes might come from. And if you have no clue what's going on, you've probably heard me mention that Pacific Rim is essentially live action American Evangelion.
Yeah.
So that gives you a sense. Except the Pacific Rim doesn't really have all the psychological nuttiness that goes on in Evangelion. And if you've ever seen any of the merchandise, I think just like Madoka Magica, the merchandise gives you a completely different impression as to what the show is like. And I think you really should go check it out. It'll be essentially free on Netflix, and it's totally worth it because it is a masterpiece of its time for sure.
Cool. All right. Okay. And then, so I only have one thing on the headline here, and this is a very important message from Tom Cruise, Jonathan's favorite actor in the whole whole world. Right up there with Glenn Close and Meryl Streep.
I like Meryl Streep.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Shirley MacLaine. It's Shirley MacLaine that's got to go.
Shirley MacLaine. Okay, right. Apparently, Tom Cruise wants his PSA. He put out a PSA, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and there have been all kinds of jokes about it on the interwebs. But apparently, you're watching your television wrong, Jonathan. I don't know if you know that or not. But if you have like a 4K TV, apparently the manufacturers have built-in image stabilization or interpolation that ruins some of the special effects that Tom Cruise has put into his movies for you to watch. So he's got this PSA about how to go in and turn off the default setting, which is to use the image interpolation or video interpolation. So the jury's out. I haven't actually gone into my TV to see if it makes any difference, but he doesn't want us to watch his... Jonathan, he doesn't want you to watch his new movie without turning off your video interpolation on your high 4K TV. So,
well, I have some good news for you, Mr. Cruz. The chances of my watching your new movie in any way, shape, or form are very slim, so therefore I will not watch it wrong.
So
it is interesting because, these are pretty interesting pieces of technology that we've got in our living rooms now, and I know I've gone into the settings and it's like I feel like I should have brought a machete and a guide because there's so many different things you can do.
Deep into the weeds, yeah.
So I don't want to give Mr. Cruz credit for shining the spotlight on this, but I suppose I ought. That I guess it's good that he's sort of calling that attention. Now, hopefully, obviously he's doing it in a very self-serving way, but at the same time, maybe he's right. Maybe it's worth going in and messing around.
Who knows? Anyway, we'll move on to the main meat of the show. Jaime, you have something here about the Avengers for us.
Yes, we have the new trailer that gives us the name of the sequel to Avengers Infinity War. It will be Avengers Endgame. And if you thought the ending of Infinity War wasn't quite happy enough, well, let me tell you, this continues that same cheerful mood right into this trailer. Doesn't really display a whole lot about what's going on. It seems to... I've not seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, but it seems to continue on from that point as well. So definitely got to go check that one out and see how it plays into things. Hard to say more without really giving away too much from the trailer.
True. And this is the third movie, right? Because I heard there was 3 movies, and this is the third one, right? Of the Avengers trilogy or whatever.
This is the fourth Avengers movie. There's Avengers Age of
there was
Ultron.
Something about a third. Weren't we expecting this sort of Gauntlet thing to be sort of a 3-parter somehow?
Well, I think Captain Marvel is sort of the bridge, but no, I think this is just it's two sort of parts to it, and that'll mark the end of the phase that they're in, and then they have gone out of their way not to say what is next. It's funny because we've actually gotten into a place now where there's usually 3 Marvel movies a year.
Right.
This year would be Black Panther, Avengers, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Next year, there's only 2 movies on the slate. It's Captain Marvel, as Jaime pointed out, is in March, and then Avengers Endgame has been moved up in North America, so it is now the last week of April, I think they said.
Really? Wow, that's pretty quick, pretty soon.
So yeah, they're planning on owning the box office for a good 2-month stretch. So they haven't gone out of their way. And again, we know, Jaime mentioned it earlier. There's a Doctor Strange. We know for a fact that they're producing a new Spider-Man movie. You're out of your mind if you think they aren't making Black Panther Part 2. There's a bunch of stuff in the pipeline to come, but they've been very explicit in not saying what and when and what order and sort of what happens next, because I think they like the idea of holding on to that mystery of who's really dead versus who will be resurrected from a pile of dust on the floor. Right. So they want you to fret for a while and worry and go on discussion boards online and take to the Twitter and start talking about, how you're worried that, oh my God, they killed Black Panther, he's dead forever, which, come on. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see when they decide to do that. If they do that before Avengers Endgame, or if they wait till then and then there's another movie coming next year, or if that's all we're going to get for 2019 and then we come back strong in 2020 with a full slate of Marvel movies again. Do we want to talk about the trailer at all? I assume you guys watched it. I've watched it, probably a good half dozen times already.
I watched it. I only watched it once, and I was in a busy room, and I only watched the first bit of it. They all seem to be very sad. That's all I kind of got from it.
Yeah, that seemed to be the overarching theme that rejoin Iron Man. He's in a bad place. We rejoin the rest of the Avengers on Earth. They're in a bad place. A lot of people are dead. And, what happens next? And it sort of leaves us with, a taste of tying into the most recent Marvel movie, which was Ant-Man and the Wasp, that Ant-Man will have a role in there. And we saw that Hawkeye has a role in there. Although, for those of us who are comic readers, we know that that's not Hawkeye.
Oh, really?
But in fact,
or is it
a different alias that he'll be using in Avengers Endgame? Using the costume that he's wearing in that trailer is his Ronin costume, which is a character that he adopted, which is a masked character that he adopted when he joined the New Avengers in the comic books, because he did not want the fact that it was Clint Barton out there. He wanted to be undercover, and if you think about the way that they left things with him wanting to basically retire so that he could protect his family as part of the Sokovia Accords in the movies, Hawkeye would have to no longer exist, right? Because if he goes out there in his regular purple costume with his no mask on, because he doesn't wear a mask, everyone would be like, yep, there's Hawkeye, get that guy in handcuffs and put him in the back of the squad car. Whereas if he's Ronin and takes on this new character, he can wear a mask, he can hide, and he can go back to being a hero again. So that's cool. I'm excited that that's a step forward in an evolution for a character that's kind of gotten pasted a little bit for being, Robin Hood in a world full of, giant super-powered beings.
Gods and monsters, yep.
Yeah, exactly. Again, he has that line himself where he's like, they're giant robots trying to tear a city apart and rip it into the sky, and I've got a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
Right.
So, yeah, lots of little tastes in there. We saw the taste of Ant-Man. We saw the taste of Hawkeye. We got, a look at sort of where the Avengers are. The core group is still alive. Obviously, the movie's going to focus a lot on that core group. We're left to still, it was a real teaser trailer, so we're left to really sort of still wait and find out if there's, much as far as plot they're going to release beforehand. They played Infinity War pretty close to the vest, and they know they're in the bag for this. This is a $2 billion picture every day of the week. It's going to be the biggest movie of 2019, hands down. They didn't even have to give you this teaser if they didn't want to.
Right.
This was Disney Marvel's Christmas gift to you. Happy holidays. I hope you enjoyed your, 2 minutes of a taste that really didn't tell you a lot other than, things are in a grim place. But yeah, it's exciting. I watched it over and over again, trying to sort of dissect little moments and see if I could make something of it, but they were deliberately obtuse and, other than making me think, oh my God, why isn't it April yet? Yeah. And it did make me think awfully hard about, what else is on the slate and what's going to happen next and where do they go next and which movie will they do first after this? And, obviously they killed off, spoilers if you haven't seen Avengers Infinity War yet, and how on earth have you been that person all this time? But, they killed off a lot of characters, very popular characters, Black Panther, Spider-Man, the entire Guardians of the Galaxy with the exception of 2. It really will be interesting to see how they order those things to get people back onto that, hey, remember how sad you were? Look how excited you are to get those characters back. Are they going to jump right back in with a Spider-Man, a Doctor Strange, a Black Panther? We know that Guardians is having a little bit of an issue now finding a new director and a creative direction, but there are easily 10 movies that are on in the pipeline. Plus we know that they're bringing big stuff forward, like Eternals is something that they're developing now, which is a 1970s, very popular 1970s series, also redone within the last decade by Neil Gaiman for Marvel. So there's a lot of stuff coming down the line, and Endgame will mark the end of a huge era. There's rumors they may really kill more characters. There's rumors that they may retire some characters because certain actors are making exorbitant amounts of money on each one of these projects. Although if you're going to make $2 billion on a picture, can you not afford to break off the whatever it is, $80 million that you have to pay Robert Downey Jr. per picture now? But still, it's pretty exciting.
All right, looking forward to it. Jaime, what do you got? Who's got the DCU thing?
I put that in there. I don't know if we want to get into it. I know you mentioned you hadn't watched the entire Elseworlds crossover. Yeah, so, again, spoilers if you haven't watched the Elseworlds crossover. In Canada, you're forgiven for not having seen it yet, considering they screwed up the order so badly for us. So once again, here's my soapbox before we get started. So the way that they organized things was in order to make up for this weird schedule. So we've got 3 different channels showing the 3 different shows here. So unlike the United States, where CW, CW, CW on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, here we were supposed to get so Sunday night was The Flash, was the first part of Elseworlds, crossover with all the CW series. Monday was Arrow, and Tuesday was the conclusion in Supergirl. Not their normal nights, they rejigged things. Okay. Here, we got nothing on Sunday night. On Monday, we got Arrow, which was part 2, with no part 1. And then on Tuesday, Netflix published Flash, and later that night, Supergirl went up on Showcase.
Right.
So for those scoring at home, you could watch them in the order of 2, 1, 3, but only if you got home early enough in the day to watch 1 before you watched 3. What a stupid thing to do. Again, I can't express how frustrating it is as a fan. It's bad enough now that Flash is always 2 days after whatever it airs in the United States, which again is, ridiculous, incredibly stupid. But the fact that they did that during this crossover series, when everybody on every nerdy geeky blog was talking about Elseworlds, is extremely frustrating. But
right, I can imagine.
That's now over with, so let's focus on the positives. The positives are, it was an interesting crossover. Again, I won't spoil things for Tim, but suffice to say that the story ends with a teaser for what they very, very blatantly labeled as coming next year in fall 2019, Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is, for those who are not aware, one of the landmark crossover series in the history of comic books. The idea was that in the mid-1980s, DC Comics continuity, or its combination of characters, was so incredibly complicated and fragmented that they made a decision to try and find a way to streamline things. There was, all these different versions from all these different comics that had existed for the previous 50 plus years of comic books, that people didn't know which Superman was which, and there was an Earth 1 and an Earth 2 and an Earth 64 and an Earth 65. They had all these different versions where, one of them, Batman was married to Catwoman and their daughter was the Huntress, and then one, Batman was a young man, and how could he possibly have had a kid? And there was versions of Superman where Superman had gray hair, and some of them where he was a Superboy, and how could those things all work in the same universe? So Crisis on Infinite Earths was this great crossover series written by Marv Wolfman, drawn by George Perez, an unbelievable work where they took all 50 years of DC continuity and created this whole huge storyline where basically, in order to save the universe from the multiverse from annihilation, the Earths all had to be basically boiled down to one. And the idea was that then, from then on, there was one Flash, one Superman, one character of each character. All the complicated backstories were gone. They rebooted a whole bunch of classic series, including Superman and Wonder Woman and The Flash and Green Arrow. All started with new number ones in that era. It was a huge, very important era in comic book history. When you look at it through the frame of the CW stuff, it's really interesting that they're going to do this storyline, and they explicitly say in the teaser fall, which is not when they typically do their crossover series. So it could be a season long or half season long or multiple episode crossover series. Particularly of note, and again, spoilers if you have not read Crisis on Infinite Earths, and you can be forgiven for that. It's an old book. But it is a landmark series for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is they killed off a lot of characters and really streamlined their universe that way. They got rid of some of the complexities. And they some characters were sort of rebranded and reborn from that. We killed off some older characters and replaced them with, younger, newer models in the same costumes. They're, two of the characters that died, two probably of the most important characters that died in that series are Flash and Supergirl. So now we're looking at still a half season to go for all of those series, plus Legends of Tomorrow. And let us not forget that existing outside of this universe, multiverse, is Black Lightning, which makes you wonder, is the plan to do what DC Comics did 30 years ago and compact all of their multiverse into one universe so that Supergirl can live in her city that's in the same universe as Flash and Green Arrow and Black Lightning and the Legends and who knows what else they might come up with next, and it'll all be within one nice tight continuity. And we're up to season 7 on Arrow. Is it time for the Arrow to die? So they aren't going to use the term Crisis on Infinite Earths lightly, I don't think. All the people who work on these shows are very respectful of the history of DC Comics. The Elseworlds story was filled with Easter eggs and carrots and all these little tasty morsels of fan service. God, it was a fan service buffet. There were so many great lines, little things, things written on the walls. At one point, they go into a storage room and it's all filled with all these great DC artifacts. If you're a longtime fan of DC, it was wonderful fan service. They're not going to do Crisis on Infinite Earths without going big. And now I am dying of curiosity to know what that means. Not only for next season, but what it means for the rest of these seasons for these shows. I mean, what did you make of all this?
Yeah, I think it was pretty spot on. Having just finished the last of the 3 episodes before recording this, it hasn't really all settled in, but I'm definitely aware of Crisis on Infinite Earths and the outcome of that. A lot of folks probably remember, like, you may not have known what it was, but you probably have seen the great comic book cover with Superman and Supergirl. Yep. And I think bringing something like that's so iconic to the small screen. It's not Avengers Infinity War in the theaters. This is like the most ambitious crossover for a TV show, probably.
Yeah.
And I do think that they definitely hinted where some of these things are going to go. Definitely, as you pointed out, the fact that this is coming out in fall of 2019 instead of sort of being the nice change of pace for the winter holiday sort of send off. I do wonder as well what will end up happening to these characters.
Yeah. And again, it makes sense. They've been in this weird sort of quandary since Supergirl started on CBS and then was rolled back into the CW universe when they decided to pick it up and carry it after CBS decided they didn't want to be in the superhero business. So they've embraced the multiverse. They've, particularly Flash. Flash has really embraced the concept of the multiverse. There's lots of different versions of their characters. It will be interesting to see if the whole purpose of this is to clean things up for their fans. Because if you were a new fan coming on board, you might be like, oh my God, who's that? Why is there another Flash? Why is there another character wearing that costume? What's going on here? You could get lost a little bit. So maybe it's time for them to streamline that. I also wonder, obviously we got Batwoman within this Elseworlds crossover. There's no doubt that was a backdoor pilot. Hey, do you like what you see here? Write a letter. Are we going to see her in Crisis and perhaps in her own series by next fall? They openly mentioned Batman for the first time in any of these series in this crossover. Is it time? And Superman was featured very prominently. Is it time for the DC Comics CW universe to go big? Justice League didn't work on the movies. It didn't. It just didn't work. There doesn't seem like they're going in that direction. Amy Adams said just this week in an interview, as far as she's concerned, she's never playing Lois Lane again, and she thinks that they're going to do different things in the DC universe and films. Fine. So let's really embrace it. Let's do something huge. Let's bring all these characters onto the TV. And to be fair, they're kicking the doors in on Marvel on the television front. This stuff is fantastic. Be ambitious. Go huge. I love Tyler Hoechlin as Superman. I think, cast me a new Batman. Let's go. Let's do a full, embrace of the top tier characters on CW. I do respect to Green Arrow. Show me a Batman series, a real Batman series on a week-to-week basis. Make him the best detective in the world. Put him on CW. I'll be there every week. And I guarantee you a lot of people will be there too.
Interesting. All right, well, let's move on to the main reason why we're here.
Last but not least.
Yes, let's have a brief conversation about Short Trek. So let's have a brief conversation about Short Trek. Brightest Star, which starred Saru, right? What did you think? What was the purpose of this episode?
I think it was to give us a little bit more of insight of where Saru comes from. And it turns out he's actually fairly unique as far as his species goes in terms of, I guess the setting for it to give, like, I forget, do we do spoiler-free recap of the short treks? It's kind of hard because it's only like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I think we kind of, I don't think we really spoiled much of the last 2 or 3 that we did. Was it 2?
We got into Calypso a fair bit. I mean, I don't think I think we pretty much laid it out. I don't think, come on, it's a 15-minute episode. I don't think you can get around talking about it. Yeah,
I mean, like, it was sort of a, I guess, what do you call those, plot exposition where they give you some backstory on the character, right?
Yeah.
There was no surprise that he was going to be picked up and taken off into the universe, but it is interesting that he comes from a very primitive society where, their sort of religion and their mythos, kind of rule their day, and he plays with the forbidden tech and somehow manages to hack it into something that sends out a beacon, right? So what did you think about that whole interplay between his father and his sister and himself and his society? And
yeah, I mean, there was a not subtle religion versus science allegory in there, obviously. I mean, again, Doug Jones is fantastic. It's really interesting to get some more insight into that character, who I think we all agree was one of the strengths of the first season of Discovery. To get a little insight into where he's from and his people and the way they exist. It's funny because they make a point especially as they wove through the different timelines, to talk about Kelpians, and they don't do them a lot of service in the first series of Discovery. So I didn't know what to expect as far as what they were like. You get this sense of sort of subservience and inferiority complex. I don't know how quite to phrase that. They have this ritual that they show on the short trek of, basically they gather a group of them and sacrifice them, I guess is the best term. I don't know what you guys interpreted that as being. I don't know if they were beamed up and taken away as slaves or food, right? Or by an alien race. So it seems to me like they are basically, subjugated, right? He makes a point through the first season of Discovery saying, his people are, basically live in fear, constant fear, and, their evolutionary imperative is different. And so it really was interesting to sort of show us against the contrast of his entire village, really we only interacted with a few people, his sister, his dad, and a few people just sort of milling about the village, but to show him being the outlier, that his path is highly uncommon for his people, and that his curiosity overcomes his evolutionary imperative. And again, we kind of had a taste of some of that from the first season, but the show not tell was I think really well done.
Yeah, there was a parallel between that and what's her name, the main character,
Michael Burnham.
Yeah, Michael Burnham. Yeah, between Michael Burnham and how she grew up in a Vulcan society and goes off and joins Star Trek. And I find it a little disconnected that he could go from being like coming from a very primitive society and then rising up to like first officer on a starship. When you think about all the sort of backstory about going through the academy and all that kind of stuff and picking the best of the best kind of thing. But so that kind of required a little bit of suspension of disbelief. But the mind you, we're talking about a fictional universe, right? Similar path as Michael Burnham from like this is not the way of our people, and into being picked up by Captain Georgiou and taken off and under her wing, as it were, and brought into that universe, right? So
yeah, and again, I think it's nice to sort of get a sense of the dynamics too, having a taste of his first interaction with that alien race being with Georgiou, right? Who sort of says to him, you're special in this world. If you want to live like this, you can live like this, or you can see the wider world. And he makes that choice to go with her, and so you see the bond between the two of them, and so you start to understand some of the dynamics of this. That Georgiou had a special relationship with Michael Burnham, and now you see the sort of the connection being made there with, why he would have been so loyal. And our first interaction with him in Discovery is him on the bridge, and he is, the slightly sycophantic officer supporting Georgiou when Burnham turns on her, right? Now we see the depth of that loyalty. He would have been obviously very faithful to her, having been taken away from, that existence.
Rescued, basically. Rescued.
Yeah, or even, lifted up from that world. So again, it just adds some nice nuance. So I think it worked really well. And again, it just adds a nice layer of nuance to the character of Saru without, again, bashing our heads in about it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that sticks out to me is I wonder if they're setting this up for some sort of storyline in Discovery Season 2. Is in Season 1 of Discovery, Saru talks about the fact that his people are prey. Mm-hmm. And without any context around that, sort of interpreted as like on his planet, his people are the ones who get chased and eaten, like by wolves or something, right? This episode really makes it seem more like they are prey in the cattle sense, or the livestock sense of, it seems like the
Sarushi?
Yeah, yeah, the Kentucky Fried Kelpian sort of thing, where their religion is based around like, yeah, we have to sacrifice people to maintain the balance, and it seems like their planet is being treated as sort of a pen to keep livestock and cattle in, and yep, you protect the cattle from the wolves, but you also turn some of them to steaks and hamburgers, right? It seems like that level of prayness. And Georgiou, it seems like when she got it seemed like she fought personally for the idea of like, all right, they don't have a direct prime directive in this era of Starfleet, but it does seem like they try not to interfere with pre-warp societies. And this was a very sort of unique society in that it's never going to get to warp, right? Because they're cattle and they're held back by the Baul, mysterious Baul. And it does make me wonder if that's going to play at all in Season 2 as a go free the people sort of thing.
It did have a little Anakin goes back to free his mother kind of vibe to it.
Sorry, who goes back to what?
Anakin, the whole Anakin Skywalker goes back to Tatooine to free his mom, kills all the sand people. Right. It had a bit of a vibe of you're telling us this so that you can set up the Saru and his people kind of is he the Messiah? Go back and save the people from their subjugation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it was a short episode. Then again,
you get just a taste, and the next one will star Rainn Wilson as Harry Mudd, reprising his role as Harry Mudd in the final short trek prior to the Season 2 premiere of Discovery.
It should be out next month this time, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's look at the watch list. What have we got on the watch list for you guys?
For me, I've got a YouTube series by Disney, specifically their Star Wars Kids channel. It's called the Star Wars Galaxy of Adventures. It is small little animated shorts, 1 to 2 minutes tops, that are sort of little bite-sized nuggets of introducing the various characters of Star Wars. And of the ones that I've seen, they cover like Luke and Leia, Darth Vader, Han Solo. And it's kind of an interesting animated setup where it's very sort of highly stylized. Each sort of frame looks kind of like a postcard that you might get at a gift shop. And they are using clips, audio clips from the various film and media to be the voices. Definitely intended for kids. It's like, all right, look, Darth Vader is bad, Luke is heroic, and, Chewbacca's a good friend, that sort of thing. So I wouldn't expect a ton of sophistication from it, but it's definitely fun to go back into that sort of childlike, this is how you see Star Wars. This is, classic battle of good versus evil. Cool. And it's free on YouTube, so it's definitely an easy one to get into.
How harmful, how much, yeah. I think I saw something about that when the some of the characters from Disney came out, like the Leia character and Ashoka and stuff like that. Is that related to this, maybe?
I don't know. You're talking about the one where they did
figures, right?
Those were brand new segments, animated in the style of like the animated Clone Wars, the 2D animated Clone Wars. This one, I don't know if they would do new content or if it will all be, based on clips from the movies.
Right. I'll have to take a look at it and see. Yep. All right. So what do you got, Jonathan?
I've got The Umbrella Academy. We saw our first trailer last week in Spotcast time for The Umbrella Academy. It's a comic book series from Dark Horse Comics that has been brought to life for Netflix. It is premiering in mid-February. This is a really, really great comic book. It is kind of a spin on the concept of the X-Men, the idea of Xavier's school. Teacher gathers together some children with exceptional abilities and bands them together, forms a super team, and goes off to fight evil. But then we fast forward 20 plus years, and life has taken its toll on these characters. And we see sort of what the ramifications of being that sort of not, it sort of takes the idea of the child actor and moves it into child superhero. If you're, the Teen Titans, what happens to you when you're the adult Titans? And
right.
And it's a really, really excellent comic book. I cannot recommend it enough. Gerard Way, lead vocalist of My Chemical Romance. There you go.
Oh, him, yeah. Okay.
My Chemical Romance. Huge comic book fan. Very, very, very vocal. He decided he wanted to do a book. He did this book as a 6-issue miniseries. It really caught on like a house on fire. It is fantastic, and it's really, really enjoyable. It seemed a little dark and a little weird to be a television series when it was done 10, 12 years ago. But now that we've gotten into the content world where everybody wants to buy every property so that they can make something out of something that's a known property, of course, it was one that should be gobbled up and done. And I think if it's going to land somewhere, Netflix is a really cool place for it because they can obviously push some envelopes. I'm glad it's not a CW show or NBC or mainstream television or anything like that. In the show notes, we'll have the link to the trailer for it. Looks fantastic, really edgy, really weird, and again, February 15th. Can't wait for that series to come.
Cool. All right. Well, for me, I'm rewatching Game of Thrones and getting ready for the last season coming out, season 7 in a couple of months, I guess, right?
You're pacing yourself? It's not coming until spring.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I don't binge. I mean, I binge watch some shows, but I'm trying not to binge watch this one. I watched season 1 this weekend. Speaking of not binging, but I'm kind of. But it's interesting to sort of go back because I know all the plot lines and plot points and stuff like that, but I don't remember. Like it was watching it like through as it was on, it would come on once a week for how many years. There was a lot of gaps between the episodes. So, but being able to sit down and watch them, one after the other, and sort of reacquainting myself with the story and seeing things in season 1 that I thought were like part of season 2 or season 3, or like I thought they were more further along in the stories. But going through Joffrey again and Robb and Robb Stark and all those kind of guys that we lost early on, but and sort of seeing the machinations of what they do and sort of how the story all fits together and going through Daenerys's marriage to her husband, what was his name?
Khal Drogo.
Khal Drogo, yeah, and how short he was in the actual series, kind of thing, right? So, just it's interesting. The interesting thing is kind of like I've never really sort of gone back and like this is like going back and reading a really good book. I don't do that very often, but when you come back at it with a different sort of perspective and sort of the end game in a sense, sort of seeing how the pieces fit together, going back through Eddard Stark and his life and his discovery of the relationship between the twins and their son and who's the rightful heir and all that kind of stuff. It's interesting to sort of put all those pieces back together, knowing where we end up, right?
Yeah.
So I recommend it. It's good. Still a good TV show to sit back and watch after not seeing it for almost a year, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I think you're on the leading edge of something I think a lot of us are intending to do as we tee up towards the last handful of episodes coming up next year. I did the same thing before the last season premiered. I went back and watched the whole thing in order.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So I had the same experience. And you're right. It's one of those series that obviously they didn't know every beat and where it was going to go, but when you start seeing the threads weaving it all together, you realize how quite clever the filmmakers, when Benioff and Weiss and the whole crew and cast, everybody working on it, really, really smart, interesting decision making and filmmaking to put it all together like that. It's
to leave foreshadowing pieces that come up, 3-4 seasons later, kind of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm listening to a great podcast right now called Binge Mode, which is on the Ringer Podcast Network, where they're going back and doing chunk by chunk all the Harry Potter books and movies.
Oh yeah,
and it's the same thing where they are discussing it from a perspective of you better have read the entire thing and seen all the movies before you listen to the podcast, because the idea is to talk about things that are happening in the first book that will pay off and how they'll pay off and everything else. And when you see how amazing a writer J.K. Rowling is to have put all these different things in place so that they can pay off down the road, and all these different ways that she sort of weaves these things together. And again, it makes you appreciate the excellence of creators like that and the creators of Game of Thrones and some of these other series where you're like, wow, that's some pretty heady stuff. These people are working, these are the Michael Jordans and the Wayne Gretzkys of their game to really put together these stories these ways.
Amazing pieces for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, listen, we're out of time. So, hey, Jonathan, if people want to find you on the interwebs, where would they look?
They can look for me on Twitter and on Instagram as @JPK News.
All right. And Jaime, if people want to find you out there?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithAHair.
All right, and I'm on Twitter as well as Timitra, Timmitra, on the Twitter machine, and that's the best way to get a hold of me. So until next month, when we have another, we have the Doctor Who Christmas special coming up, and we didn't really talk much about Doctor Who this time, but
I will catch up. We'll have a good conversation, yeah.
And I just saw the last episode of this season, so I still kind of need to let it sink in a little bit, especially as a newbie to the franchise.
And if I can put a little teaser out there, I'm going to suggest it might be time for the second annual Spockies.
Spockies?
Ooh, that's right. Yeah, we do our best of the year.
I may or may not have already started working on the list. So
there you go.
We may be ready to come back in the not distant future and talk about the best of and what we're looking forward to in 2019.
Alrighty. Okay. Cool. All right. So I guess until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
Bye.
That concludes another episode of Spotcast, streamed to you via Subspace Signal. I'm friend of the show, Greg Keogh, joining you from Sector 001. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with your Star Trek nerd hosts on the website or follow them on Twitter. They're @Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send them a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending it to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount of Gold Press Platinum at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help them out on the website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future. Wishing you peace and long life.
Oh, by the way, before we actually do go, have you guys seen the trailer for the Superman is Bad movie?
Superman is
bad. No, I haven't.
There was a trailer on the other day. I forget what it's called, but it's literally this couple that can't have kids, and this meteor lands in their yard, and they're out on the farm, and they find this baby, and they bring him into the house, and they put his little spaceship in the barn, and turns out he's a little hellion, right? So it's sort of like Damien as Superman, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, I forget what it's called. Begins with B. But yeah, it's I watched it the other day and I'm like, whoa, this is really weird. And it's like they're totally stolen the Superman plot, right? And then it turns out that it's like, what if Superman was a horror movie?
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, surprised you guys hadn't seen it.
You'll have to throw a link in the channel or something for us to.
Yeah, I'll link it in the show notes here when I find it for those listening. Those who use what are we
transporting it home?
Yeah, and I'll throw it in the. I'll definitely let you guys know about it when I see it again. But it was odd. I'm not going to go see it because it's like a horror movie franchise type movie. But yeah, it was just an interesting take on the Superman story.
Yep. The other one we didn't talk about this week that I was up for. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch, but I watched Fantastic Beasts Part 2 last week.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention that when we were talking earlier about dredging up old stories again. So, so you actually got to see that, eh?
I did. We are all Harry Potter fans here, with the minor exception of Foster is a casual fan. The rest of us really enjoy it. And so we rewatched the first one and decided, okay, on a whim on a Sunday evening, we went and saw Xavier and Sherry and I went and saw part 2. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see it, but
no, I haven't yet. I got the poster though when I went to see First Man.
Yeah, Jaime, have you seen it yet?
I have not seen part 2.
No, it's a bridge movie. It's your standard, like, we knew that this was a 5-part series. The first one was an establishing piece. This one was a lot about sort of laying the tracks. So it's, as a standalone film, it's not the best, but yeah, if you guys get a chance to catch up with that one, it'd be good to sort of get into a little bit, because there is some real universe building towards what's going on in the sort of whole Harry Potter universe. There is some stuff that has some interesting ramifications for what we understand or know or think we know about the larger Harry Potter canon and universe. It's definitely worth a watch. The performances make it worthwhile. Jude Law as young Dumbledore is awesome. Johnny Depp, again, he's left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth personally. He's starting to climb into that Tom Cruise list, but he also is quite magnetic as Grindelwald, and it does sort of build to an interesting place that is, I'm sure, going to get spoiled for you before long if you're out in the blogosphere. So it's worth a watch at some point.
Cool. All right. I finally got around to seeing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
The Johnny Depp one?
Yeah. Ugh. Very strange movie. I didn't watch the whole thing, but yeah.
I mean, I showed both of those movies, both versions of the Willy Wonka and that one, to my children, and they actually prefer the Johnny Depp version. One, yeah. No, they prefer the Johnny Depp one, and it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because I'm the biggest Gene Wilder fan, and that is just one of the great performances. So that one, when they request, we should watch that again. I'm like, that, Gene Wilder, I'll watch that anytime. And they're like, no, the Johnny Depp. I'm like, oh, killing me.
All right. Anyway, we gotta go.
Kate.
All right. Talk to you next time.
Catch you later. Yeah, let's end this.